Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: The Manhattan Project is the best TMT game of the era. Better than Turtles in Time. That's right, I said it. Released in 1992 to critical acclaim, even winning EGM's Best NES Game of the Year, TMNT 3 is an excellent beat-em-up of the era that improves on everything its predecessor started. But despite that, despite the enduring love the TMNT franchise maintains, and even despite the fact that it is arguably the best game in the series, the Manhattan Project just doesn't get the love it deserves. And it's not surprising why. I mean, just think about it. The first TMNT game on NES was the first TMNT game that kids could actually play at home, and many still think of it as the first TMNT game ever made. It's not. And also in big parts thanks to the internet, it has become infamous in the retro community for its obnoxious difficulty. TMNT 2, the arcade game, was a pretty faithful port of its arcade counterpart, by NES standards, with the arcade game being the actual first TMNT game, and the beat-em-up that really raised the bar for what was expected of the genre. And then, of course, in 1992, the same year that TMNT 3 dropped, TMNT 4 Turtles in Time hit store shelves on the shiny new Super Nintendo, which was also an arcade port, and arguably better than the game it was ported from. And poor TMNT 3, its own original game, was just jammed between all these heavy hitters on hardware that was currently being phased out. It's no wonder that it's not as fondly remembered, despite how many things it does better than its contemporaries. Hey gamers, it's me, Spammer D, and let me tell you about this game. I love it. It was actually my very first game ever. I think. I'm not 100% on that, but I love it all the same, and you better believe I'm gonna go all in on it. And trust me, just because I'm a little blinded by nostalgia doesn't mean I don't see its faults. But this one actually holds up. So with that in mind, let's just jump into it. With this awesome opening, of course. Now, being a traditional retro era beat 'em up, the story is nothing special or even important. But it's certainly amusing here. So, the giant, green, Mutant Turtles, known for their ninja skills and the art of invisibility, have decided to take a day at the beach, completely out in the open. But this is Florida, so, it's okay. Not the weirdest thing you're gonna see in the day. Also, I especially love that in 1992, they dragged a tube TV with them out to the beach, just so they could watch a news report. And of course, being the petty villain that Shredder is, in this continuity, he decides to ruin the Turtles' vacation by doing exactly what we'd all expect him to.
We save April at least once a day. Yeah! You can set your watch to it.
But this time around, he's also pulled a reverse Robotnik, causing Manhattan to rise out of the sea. And since Sonic is a little busy, it's up to the Turtles to stop him. TMNT 3, like its predecessor and successor, is a two-player co-op arcade-style beat-em-up, meaning enemies pop up, and you gotta beat them all down in order to move on. Rinse and repeat until you win, with some boss fights and special stages thrown in for good measure. Now, of course, you could technically explain any arcade-style beat-em-up that way, if you really wanted to, but it's how these elements are broken down that makes each game unique. And interestingly, what makes TMNT 3 special is actually how nuanced it is. The battle begins at the beach, a pretty unique starting location for the series, before gradually returning to the sewers and Technodrome that we all know and love. And right out the gate, the foot soldiers are on the attack, and show off just how diverse they can really be, despite most of them being in the same weight class. Some throw reflectable shuriken, others toss sand in your eyes to stun you. We've got jumpers, we've got sliders, jerks running around with electric cabling, and plenty more. Honestly, the variety is solid, and these are probably some of the most dynamic of any of the Turtles' foes ever, bosses included. And yes, I am counting the 3D games too. These enemies just seem, well, smarter, with ranged baddies actually being intelligent enough to step away from you instead of getting right up in your face. Some counter certain attacks, and the bosses especially have much more dangerous patterns and counters, all of which can keep you on your toes. And considering the NES only has 2 buttons, The green machines actually have a pretty decent repertoire to handle them all with. Like in TMNT 2, the turtles once again have their jump kick, a ninja's best friend, perfect for clipping bosses. They also have their basic attack, which often takes 2 or more swipes to bring down a foe. However, unlike in the arcade game, this time around, the turtles have a throw, which is activated by pressing the attack and down button together. And the throw is basically a one-hit kill for standard enemies, just like the special was in the second game. Which may beg the question, why would you ever bother using the basic attack when that's an option? There certainly wasn't a reason to not spam the crap out of the special in the second game. That's what I did. Well, here's where the nuance comes in. Unlike in TMNT 2 and 4, where the score is basically just a tally of how many foes you've downed, this time it's more akin to a standard scoring system, where how you scrap the baddies counts. Like how you get more points for using a basic attack over the throw, because you're more likely to take a hit yourself doing so. And more points means more lives, which are much easier to get early on in this game. But more importantly, it also means more opportunities to swap your turtles. Yes, unlike the arcade ports, this time you don't have to wait for it to continue to switch your turtle, you can do it every time you die, which opens up a lot more strategy, as each turtle has their own special to help make them feel more unique. And while you can make any argument you want for why the other Turtle games are better than 3, but there is no escaping the fact that Turtles 3 easily has the best specials, and anyone who tells you otherwise is full of it. Leonardo's special is a buzzsaw of blades, great for multi-hits on stationary enemies. Raph has a high-speed corkscrew spin, perfect for a quick hit against moving targets. Donnie's is actually pretty similar, but much slower and shorter ranged, but it can hit more than once. And Mikey is the only turtle that can take to the air. And while using your special does eat up some of your health, like it does in most classic beat-em-ups, your health bar is actually pretty generous, so there's no need to be stingy. Plus, it gives you invincibility frames, so it's a great way to turn the tables when you're cornered. Time for a pro tip. So if you could just, pretend I'm a pro while you follow along. One major flaw that most retro brawlers share is just how limited the special really is. Let's pick on the X-Men arcade game for just a second. In that game, your special eats through your health really fast, and once you're too low, you can't use it anymore. So you're left close to death without your trump card. TMNT 3 on the other hand lets you make a last stand. Once you're on your last bar of health, you can use your special as much as you want at no cost. So abuse it. Abuse the damage and the invincibility frames, especially at bosses since you get full health at the start of the next stage. Though, I guess that doesn't really help if you end up dying first. And that's where I gotta bring up the big problem with the specials. Mostly that they're just, unreliable. And here's the culprit. What's this? In order to use your special, you have to press the A and B button at the same time. But, like in Turtles 2, you have to press the A button slightly before the B button. Fail to do so, and you're probably taking a hit. So much for a last stand. And the specials aren't the only problems. TMNT 3 is a gorgeous looking game for the NES. It's bright and colorful, the levels have a lot of variety, and are a bit more interactive than a lot of brawlers of the era. Like how the cannons can just emerge from the background in the third stage to blast you. And I especially love how Toka can just uppercut you into an electric sign. But all that quality comes at a cost. Just like in TMNT 1 and 2, TMNT 3 suffers from some pretty bad flickering, especially in stage 1. And while not game breaking, retro fans probably won't even give it a thought, it's still annoying. But what's worse, and an actual problem, is the slowdown. And while it's not that frequent, only really occurring when the game tries to really push the NES to its limit, like in the surfing stage with all these electrical obstacles, or in the stage with the moving laser floor, it can get pretty bad sometimes, which I actually tend to take advantage of, but others aren't so experienced with, and I think it'll piss off a lot of new players. But you know what? That's okay. We'll soothe their pain with the game's shellacious soundtrack.
I like it! Step up!
Fast, fun, upbeat, and punchy is how the Turtles roll, keeping that energy going as you kick shell from stage to stage. These tunes just rock, and it's not that shocking why either. This was Konami in its prime. Contra, Castlevania, need I say more? Plus, those classic Konami sound effects that they used in a lot of their games, man, they just hit me right in the nostalgia. I love it. In fact, I just love TMNT 3. It holds a special place in my heart, and it's certainly a game worthy of a place in yours too. The graphics are top tier for the era, despite some minor issues, and the music is just as radical as ever. And while it may not have the visuals or the audio, and definitely not the quality of controls to compete with Turtles in Time, what it does have really does stand on its own merits and gives it a run for its money. The combat, while simple, is fun and challenging without ever really feeling unfair. It's very balanced with a diverse group of foes that keep things interesting, and oddly come off as much more confident than most enemies you usually see in beat-em-ups. And the specials absolutely give it a leg up on every other TMNT game. And really, you just can't go wrong with 2-player co-op. But unfortunately, like all the other classic TMNT games, due to licensing issues, this one has never seen re-release, keeping it trapped on the NES, meaning you'll either need to pick up a physical cart or emulate. But it is definitely worth it. If you are a fan of classic TMNT games, TMNT overall, beat-em-ups, co-op action games, or just retro games in general, you absolutely need to check out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: The Manhattan Project. It comes highly recommended.